David Brewster here with an episode of Chordplay, and this is the 50th episode special. And this is kind of a milestone for me and this channel. And I just wanted to thank everybody for the continued support, comments, the views, the likes, the shares, the Patreon supporters who have access to PDF files, with the notation and the tab. They've grown considerably too in recent months. So I'm blown away. And for those of you that don't know this, I almost didn't do this. I had a YouTube channel that I opened like in 2007, and that's just in my name, like David Brewster Music. And it didn't really go anywhere. And that was a long time ago. I mean, 2007, and that was over 12 years ago. And, before I opened this channel, I think I had like somewhere around 450 subscribers. I had a few videos on that channel that had some views and some feedback, and some action, but it didn't really go anywhere, right? And when I thought about doing this, I thought, well, I was thinking about buying a camera. Obviously I upgraded and bought a light, to kind of help the lighting situation. So I really, like literally almost didn't do this, mainly because, well, the internet's kind of it's an amazing place, where you can do research and communicate and network and you can do a lot of great things on the internet, but there's a lot of bad things on the internet. And there's racism and sexism and animal cruelty and, bullying and all this stuff that happens online. And around the time that I decided I was going to try to do this, I was about that close from just deleting my Facebook page and just kind of staying offline for the most part. I could do research and I could email and do work and things like that. But social media and everything was kind of turning me off, where I thought, you know what? Every day I get up and it's like I'm looking at someone else's trash, political trash, religious trash, just human trash, and it's like, gosh. And it was really, it was honestly kind of depressing me and kind of wearing me down, where I thought, I don't really want to play this game anymore. And then I thought about it and I thought, well, wait, why don't I focus on doing something positive? And, I had ideas. I've been, kind of tinkering and thinking about doing something like this online for a long time. And for those of you that don't know me, for those of you that know me, whether you're a family or a friend or an old student or maybe somebody I played in a band with or whoever, when you see these videos, there's really nothing surprising or new. It's like, oh, hey, there's Dave with a guitar. Cool, there's Dave. This is normal, for me. But for those of you that don't know me, you might be judging me and thinking, well, who's this guy? That's all we need is another douchebag on YouTube with a guitar. Well, I can assure you, I'm an educated, experienced douchebag with a guitar. And I kind of felt like I had, my own kind of ideas and my own way of teaching, my own way of kind of inspiring people and working with people, because I've been doing different versions of this since I was 17 years old. I was still in high school when I started teaching full-time at a local music store. I know that this amp and my tone on these videos is impressing some of you, because the most common comment and question that I receive is, what are you playing it through? What amp is that? Great tone, how did you get it? And I think some of you are expecting Kemper or, some other piece of gear that's really popular. And here I am using some old, obsolete, outdated amp that sounds good, but most of you are not aware of this amp or, its existence. But, I'm not using this because it's all I have. I have other amps I could use. I'm just using this because I like it. I've had it since 2004. It's reliable. It's packed with features. I mean, a built-in tuner. It's got a great tone. And I can find my sound really easily with this. And it works for me. So for some of you, you might be looking at my rig and thinking, why is he using that old piece of junk? Well, because that old piece of junk actually sounds pretty good. And, I'm totally a if it ain't broke, don't fix it type of person. For those of you watching this and you're thinking, wow, Brewster really loves chords. Yes, I do. I love chords. I find chords one of the most interesting, components or elements of music. And I love scales and arpeggios and lots of other things too. But chords to me, they've always kind of interested, me, and they've kind of, caught my attention, or they captured my imagination. And I don't know. I'm not saying I'm unique or I'm special. It's just I've always had kind of this connection with chords. You've been watching some of these lessons and kind of following through, these chord play episodes. You'll start to notice, like habits and things kind of being repeated. An E minor add 9 right here. That chord has popped up more than any other in these chord play episodes, from Pink Floyd and Al Di Meola, and there's a ton of songs that feature that chord. And you'll also find the guitarist loves sus chords, right? We've had a lot of episodes where we have a lot of sus action, and partial chords too. Guitarists love partial chords. Just little pieces and parts. So for those of you that don't realize it, on guitar, it actually is more effective and makes more sense to play small voicings. In the beginning, when you see bar chords and you learn chords, you're learning these full, like 5 and 6 string, chord shapes. But in the real world, especially with a band, you really don't, want to use those chords that often. They're too big, they're too clunky. It fills up way too much space. And if you're playing a lot of these full bar chords, you're stepping on other musicians in your band's toes. Now, if you're a solo artist and you're doing like solo acoustic, or maybe like an acoustic duo, then yeah, you can fill up your chords and kind of play bigger, voicings. But if you're like in a 4 or 5 piece band, especially if there's another guitarist playing, you don't want to use those great big chords. You want to use little pieces of chords, dyads and little triads and partial chords. For this episode, I'm actually going to share some of my own music and kind of talk about what I was thinking when I wrote it, or how I came up with it. And I've had a lot of requests from people, asking for my music or some of my own personal, licks and ideas and stuff. And I plan on doing this with 3 for All as well, but we haven't hit 50 episodes yet. So Chordplay, hit 50 episodes first. So here I am talking about Chordplay. The first example here is a song that I actually came up with a long time ago. And I was playing with a group originally from Louisville, Kentucky. And we were called Giovanni Jones. And if you don't know who Giovanni Jones was, you should definitely watch some more Looney Tunes and Bugs Bunny, because he's a very famous character on Looney Tunes. But anyway, in that band, we had a song called Ching Chang. And I remember I named it that because that's kind of what the guitar part sounded like. It's just 2 chords going back and forth. And I remember when I came up with this chord progression, I was working on building strength and control between my 3rd and pinky finger. And I was working on like scale exercises and stuff like that. But then I started to notice, like the Hendrix chord. I thought, well, the Hendrix chord uses those 2 fingers. And then I thought, well, what happens if I flip that around this way? And then I started to play with that idea. So I literally came up with this riff just by playing with the Hendrix chord. And I really just wanted to challenge those 2 fingers, the 3rd and the pinky. And it's a really simple riff, just based around, moving those 2 fingers. So this kind of physical challenge, turned into part of a song. You look at that first chord, that's like an E minor 7 right there. There's no 5th, but it's still an E minor 7. And then when we flip these 2 around and then also raise the 3rd right there, then that's going to change it to an E major 9 with no 5th. So you'll notice a lot of the chords I'm going to share in this lesson from my own music. I didn't really notice it until I analyzed the chords and defined them. And I noticed like a lot of these chords don't have the 5th. So I don't know if that's unconscious or something like that, but you'll notice a lot of these chords are missing the 5th. So right there, an E minor 7 with no 5th and an E major 9. The next example comes from a song of mine called Redeem, and this is on my album Carbon, which you can find a lot of my music on Bandcamp if you're interested in kind of hearing, my music. And then this riff, really, I was just playing around with a visual idea. I was kind of targeting like this E sus2, or you can also think of that as kind of like part of an add 9 shape. I'm a big fan of those add 9 chords, whether it's major or minor or just this little piece, that kind of functions like a sus2. But I was literally sitting there with that chord, and then I thought, well, what would happen if this finger, played this G note right there? And then I thought, okay, well, what happens if I grab the D note right there? And then I just started kind of playing with that, and my ear kind of heard a melody right off the bat. And then the next thing I heard was this. So I heard like this kind of melodic chord progression, which turned into came about just from playing with those chords. These are all partial chord shapes, but there's an E sus2 technically. That's kind of functioning as G major 7, and there's no fifth once again. And then when you move over to that D note, that's kind of a D6 with no fifth. And then when that moves down, then that becomes a C6 with no fifth. And then this would be basically a B7 sus4, and then a B7 with no fifth. And you'll find, if you listen to some of my music, or if you kind of analyze some of these things that I do, I'm a big fan of keeping certain notes held and then changing the root note, or maybe changing another note in the chord. And you hear this kind of mutual exchange between chords, and it catches your attention, catches your ear. When you hear, part of the chord, remains, and then something in the chord changed, it definitely, draws attention to itself. And I just like the way that chord progression sounds. Up next is something that I find myself doing a lot. This isn't necessarily from a song, but I have kind of, targeted this or used this in a lot of my music. And that's this neat little kind of 2-chord transition between the 4 and the 5 chord in a key. So if you think of, this, which that's basically like an A add 9. And in my mind, I'm just thinking of that C sharp, D sharp, and E right here on the G string. Okay, so that's going to be an A add 9, A sus2 sharp 11, and then an A sus2. So there's, 3 notes on that G string, but it's making 3 different chords appear. Now right there, especially with that sharp 11, it's signaling Lydian, basically A Lydian. And then I like raising that root note to B, and then we can basically recycle those same chords, but now we have 3 different B flavors. So right there, that basically would be an A7 sus2 sus4 with no fifth. And then you're going to raise up to that D sharp right there, and that would be a B11 with no fifth. And then reach up to grab that E, and then that's a B7 sus4 with no fifth. So it's the same 3 chords we had with A, but now shifted to the key of B. So right there over B, that's kind of signaling, like B mixolydian. So I kind of like that Lydian into mixolydian kind of transition, which I think is really cool. last last example here comes from a song of mine called A Fate Forgotten, and I've had this for a long time. This actually appears on my first like electric guitar kind of homemade album or release that I made, The Outer Sanctum, which was a very humble and unknowledgeable experiment with recording, with my computer at home. And it's I'm proud of it, but the recording quality could be a little better, and it was a very early experiment and attempt at making an album at home. I do like the music. I just wish I could go back and kind of redo some of the editing and some of the mixing and stuff and re-record a few things. But anyway, that happens when you make something and then you release it and then you go back and check it out a decade later or more. It's like, oh wow, yeah, I wish I could have done that a little bit better. But I'm proud of the music, just not really the production so much. But anyway, this chord is really interesting, and honestly, I don't remember where this came from. I don't remember the initial introduction to the shape, but that would be a C minor add 9, and I'm a big fan of those add 9 chords, so I honestly don't remember where that came from. Now, a C minor add 9 has an E flat right there. So the last thing you want to do, avoid the low E strings big time, because that's going to clash and that would sound horrible with that E flat. So this is tricky because you have to really avoid, your outside strings, the low E and the high E. But it looks like this. And right there I'm just sliding up with my pinky to grab that E flat, and then that just turns it into C minor. That D right there was the 9th of the C minor add 9. And then it's going to move up to this. And right there you can see that's an A flat major 7 with no third. And then it moves up to that A flat sus2 right there. And I kind of like the way that sounds too. Because I like how the first chord had a note that moved. And so does the second chord. And then right there I take that and move it up a whole step. And now I'm playing a B flat sus2. Or I'm sorry, a B flat 6 with no third. And then a B flat sus2. And then right there we're going to move down basically where it's kind of positioned around F, and there's an F sus2, and I'm also grabbing that A flat there, which would convert that to F minor. And that last little chord there, that's definitely a handful. And that would be, an A flat major 7 with no 5th. So that whole part together. That's going to wrap the 50th episode of Chordplay, and I just decided to kind of focus on some of my own music and just kind of throw out, some different chords there that maybe you haven't heard or seen before, and you probably haven't ever heard of any of my music. And you can find, these songs and a lot of other ones on Bandcamp. But once again, I want to thank everybody for the continued, attention and support, and the views and the comments and the excitement surrounding late night lessons. And I really would like to continue doing this, and I have a lot of ideas as far as presenting and building new material in the future. So I'm only getting started, and depending on what you do, that will kind of dictate what I do. If everybody just kind of walks away, then I'll stop doing this. But if the support continues and the excitement continues, and we keep growing this channel, I have a lot of things that I'm going to introduce in the very near future. I have some big plans for next year, and I'm talking about things in addition to what I'm already doing. So I know you don't know what I'm talking about, but just trust me. I have a lot of ideas that I'm going to kind of set into motion, and this is all just kind of a work in progress and an experiment. So this is only the beginning. I haven't even been doing this a year yet, and already the growth and the response has been very, very, very motivating, inspiring, and infectious too. Where it's just like, oh my gosh, okay, I think this is actually doing something. So thank you, all of you. And please leave some feedback and comments. Subscribe to Late Night Lessons. And I'll be back, with some new material and a regular episode of Chordplay very soon. Thank you.